Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So I'm a realtor in the Midwest in the United States, and I go into a lot of houses. And this isn't going to be like your classic, like doors were opening and closing, lights were on and off, which I have had those experiences in homes. I've had experiences like that since I was a kid. Like, I am just a hub. I am a haunted person. And if there is something, I'm going to know about it. But this particular thing caught me off guard a little bit. So the year is 2020. We are, COVID pandemic is booming and we're doing a lot of virtual showings. I'm getting a lot of requests from clients that are out of state, trying to move to our state, where the restrictions weren't as big here. So a lot of people were kind of moving state to state at the time. So I get a call from a client about this house that is a foreclosure. It sits on a little bit of acreage way out in the country. I'm talking 10 miles down a rural highway and then another 10 minutes or so down in gravel before you reach this home. So this client calls, says, hey, I'm interested in this house, 5 bedrooms, multiple bathrooms. It's in our price range. It's actually way below our price range. Can you do a video showing for us? So I say, absolutely, I can. I'd be happy to. So I make the appointment that day. I leave the office. I am driving out in the middle of nowhere. I get on the gravel road. I start recording as I drive up to the house. And when I pull up, I'm just like, wow, this is so beautiful. This place is gorgeous. I walk them all around the outside. And as I'm doing this showing, I'm really excited for this client. Obviously, I want them to get it, but I'm also kind of envisioning myself here. So I am taking them through the home. There's several smaller bedrooms, but the master suite is gigantic. The basement is like fully finished, and there's, room for like a playroom down there for my kids, and a workout room, and an office at home for me, and a workshop room for my husband in the basement. And there's plenty of room for us to build him a shop and to have a chicken coop. And so I go through and I am doing this showing, putting my 100% into this video showing for this client. All the while in the back of my mind, I'm also picturing myself here. So I send this video to my client. I say, hey, here's the stuff. Let me know if you're interested. I'll write something up. And so a day goes by. Client finally reaches back out to me and he said, hey, Mandy, I'm thinking that this is probably a little too much work for us. It was definitely a fixer-upper, needed some love, but the potential was there. So I'm like, that's totally fine. I get it. There's a couple other properties that I can show you. If you change your mind about this one, you just let me know. So I immediately, over the course of the next couple of days, I'm thinking about this house. I'm envisioning us there. My husband and I had been talking about moving ourselves because we were outgrowing the house we were in. We had just had a baby. We needed more space and interest rates were low. So my husband gets off work early one day. And this was probably about 3 days after the initial showing. And I had been doing nothing but thinking about this house. I dreamt about it. I thought about it at work. I pulled it up on my computer every chance I got. And so my husband gets off work early. He's at home. I said, hey, I'm going to leave the office. I'm going to pick you up. Let's go see this house. He's like, all right. So I go and pick him up and the baby, and we head on out to the showing. I call the agent, let them know, like, hey, I am looking at this for me. Full disclosure. We get to the house. My husband likes the outside of it. I'm talking about, hey, we could put your shop here, and the chicken coop could go there, and the play set could go here. And, I am just giving him this whole spiel. Finally get to the front door. I unlock it. I open it up, and you open up, and you're in this living room with like a little closet to your left, and there's like a fireplace on the right-hand wall, and a hallway that goes back down, and then like across from the living room is the kitchen. So I immediately walk in. I'm showing him this fireplace, talking about like this mantle that we could build above the fireplace, and there was a sunroom off the kitchen that we could make the kitchen bigger because it was kind of a small kitchen. And I am just like, I dove right in to telling him how we could make this house work for us. It was a lot of work, but my husband is such a green flag that if I said this was the one, he was going to say, all right, let's make it happen. So I am doing my best to sell him on this place. I don't know if I have ever like sold a home so hard or like tried to sell a home so hard to somebody. And I'm doing this to my own husband. I'm in the middle of my spiel and he goes, babe, stop. And so I stop and I look at him, I'm like, what? And he said, look at me. And I looked at him in the eyes and he said, you're telling me you don't feel that? My husband, who doesn't really have like a spiritual bone in that way in his body, said, you don't feel that? And as soon as those words left his mouth, it was like a veil was lifted. I mean, there was pressure in my chest, and I felt it. It was thick. It was malevolent. It was tangible in that home. Whatever was in there had gotten inside my head so hard and masqueraded itself as like my dream home. And the second that he said that, I got full body chills. I mean, like I said, the air was thick, the pressure on my chest. I looked down the hallway and my heart fell into my butt, because I knew that at the end of that hallway in that master bedroom, there was something that was not good. And so I picked up my baby's pumpkin seat off the living room floor. I walked out of that house as fast as I could. We locked the door, and we took off out of there. But if it had not been for my husband waking me up that day, I don't know what this video would look like. I don't know what resides in that home or what that was. But ever since then, the house was bought and flipped, and it sold, and then it sold again. So since then, it has been purchased and sold 2 or 3 times now. And now every time I go into a showing, I am a Christian, so I will pray for protection, and I set my intentions before I walk in there. And it has done really well so far. But if you're a realtor out there and you are a spooky girl on any level, like, protect yourself, because I don't know what that was. And to this day, it terrifies me. It terrifies me to think what that could have been. And like I said, I was having dreams about this place, about me walking into this place and like living in this place, and just like I was seeing myself there. And even for like a week or 2 after that, I was still thinking about and dreaming about this home. So y'all be careful out there. And if you want to hear any of my other stories, let me know. I got a handful of them.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
All right, I've been loving this trend, and it's crazy that so many people have different stories. And so I was like, all right, I'll share mine. I haven't shared with many people, but here we go. So this is probably like 2004, doesn't matter what date, doesn't matter. And my friend's parents had a beach house down in Nehalem, Oregon, which is really small, like old school, like foresting town, like near the coast. So they had this really like fancy smancy house, kind of on this like hilltop that overlooked the bay, but it was heavily forested. Like when you turn the lights off in the house, there was no street lights, so it would be pitch black, right? So it starts off that night. We're watching the I think it's like what did I say, 2004? So it might be like 2007. What the year that the Jessica Biel Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out, we were watching that in their house. And the way they had their windows, it was kind of like a screw like window. You'd have to like crank it to like close it, so it'd be like sealed tight. So we're watching the movie. Halfway through the movie or whatever, it pops open and swings, and I'm sitting on the couch closest to it, and it slams against the wall, like boom, and I like shit my pants, you know what I mean? And I like fall off the couch, and I'm like, what the? And they're like, oh, haha, must have been the wind. And I'm like, no, there's no way that was possible. There's no way. So anyway, we finished the movie, terrifying, and they're like, okay, time for bed. The way their house was set up, it was 3 stories, and their parents were on the very top level. There was like the middle with like the kitchen, living room, and in the bottom there was the bedroom, so that my friend, her sister, and I were all in. And so the guest bedroom where I was staying, you had to go through the laundry room, through another door to get to it. So you had to go through 2 separate doors just to get to the guest room, right? And in the guest room, they had a door that if you opened it and walked outside, you'd walk straight into the woods. Don't know why they had it. There was like no patio or like nothing. You just walk out into the woods. So I'm in bed, everyone's asleep, and I'm, laying there like la la la, and I start hearing this like scraping on the wall, and it's not like mice where it's like scraping, like someone has like a gardening tool, a rake, and they're scraping the outside of the wall because all four or two of my walls were in the woods, and it starts scraping, and I'm like, okay. And like I said, there's no one in the second level above us. There's no one in the second level above us. And the scraping starts moving up the wall. It gets directly above me, and they kind of had like an old school, like, popcorn ceiling, I guess, maybe. And so pieces of the ceiling started to fall on me as I'm like laying there in the bed. And I'm like, absolutely no. So I get my ass out of there and I go to the laundry room door to get out to the rest of the house. It's locked. Funny thing is, you can only lock it from the outside, which is crazy. I was the last one in that room, and I'm like, there's no way I locked myself in. There's no way. And it was again a glass door, and no one came in to like lock the door to like play a trick or like whatever. So I'm banging on the door, and I'm like, please, please, oh my god, oh my god. Boom, the door opens. 3 opens. And so I run into my friend's bedroom, and I'm like, oh my god, there's something in there. I don't know what it is. Like, what the... So we close her door. We end up falling asleep. Whatever. Wake up the next day. And I tell her parents what I heard and like what was happening. That's when her dad, who was a police officer at the time, was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I didn't tell you guys, I didn't want to scare you, but he would go down there on the weekends by himself, but they would take their, like, huge dog. And he was like, oh, yeah, like, sometimes we hear, like, kids, like, laughing. I've seen shadows in the house. I've seen shadows running through the woods. They had this, like, big window that you could look out into the woods. And he was like, oh, I would see, like, shadows, like, running through there. And I was like, huh? Like, what? Then he tells us, yeah, oh, it's a Native American burial ground that this house is built on. Or like the hill they were on, there was like a few other houses up there, but like where they were, it was a sacred place to the Native Americans that was demolished, you know, or whatever awful thing was. I'm like, oh, you could have told us that maybe before, and I would have never come. So we're still there for like another night, and we're down in my room in the guest room, and we're playing like a board game or something. I don't remember what we were doing, whichever. And her mom takes a picture, and back in these days, it was a digital camera, right? So she takes a picture of it, and you see the three of us, and we're like, ah, and then you can see there's like the glass door that goes out to the woods. There is a shadow figure in the door, and it's like you can see its eyes, you can see its like mouth, like the nostrils, the head, and you can see its shoulders, and then it's just like black. And the way that we were like positioned, the way the lighting was, there's no way it could have been anyone in that room. No way, absolutely not. I wish I had the picture. It's been so long ago, I don't even know where it's at. I'm getting like chills right now. And I never went back after that because it was like one of the scariest nights of my life. And then after that, them telling us all the information, I was like, yeah, no, I'm never going back. So I don't know if they still have that house. I think they do. Hopefully they. I mean, I don't think the spirits were like disruptive or anything, but just creepy. It sends chills up my spine. So that's it. All right, bye. Oh no, wait, I'm still.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, so this one really scares me. So, from a young age, I've always kind of known that there's other things in this world, you know. I've always been sensitive to things, and even now when I'm older, you know, I can sense when things are there, I hear things that aren't there. So, as a kid, I was bound to have seen or heard some shit, right? So, for context, I had an older cousin that used to live not far from my house, and we used to go visit her every now and then and her kids. And I was probably about 9 or 10 at the time. And so one night we go around, you know, just spend the night with her for a little bit. And I asked to go play on her computer in her room upstairs. Just, you know, I didn't want to sit and talk with the adults. I wanted to go play at Papa's Pizzeria or something in her room. So I go upstairs and I'm sat on the computer, and in her bedroom she had the computer in the corner, and to the back of that, like, your back was facing big massive wardrobe with mirrors on it. It was just a full mirrored wardrobe. So I'm sitting playing on the computer as a kid does, and I just get the sense that I'm being watched, and I ignore it, you know, whatever. You've got your back to a mirror, you're gonna feel weird. So anyway, carry on playing on the computer, and then I hear talking like behind me, and it's saying the same thing over and over again, and it's something like, "I love you, Grace. I love you, Grace," over and over again, and it's a man's voice. So I turn around, and there's no man in the house. There's got to be something there. So I turn around, and in the mirror, there is a man in the mirror, literally holding what looks to be like a newborn baby. And I'm staring at it, and he's clutching the baby, and he's looking down at the baby, and he keeps whispering, like, well, it sounds like whispering, it's not very loud, "I love you, Grace." I fucking run. I've seen none of this shit before. I leg it downstairs. And I say to my cousin, "I've just seen a man upstairs, like, in your bedroom, in the mirror, holding a baby, and saying, 'I love you, Grace.'" My cousin turns white as a sheet, and she's like, "What do you look like?" And to this day I can distinctly remember what he looks like. I described the outfit he's wearing, like the type of like beard and moustache he had, the colour of his hair. She turns even whiter, and she gets a picture of her dead dad, and she hands me and goes, "Was it him?" And I said, "Yeah, that was him, down to a T." And that was the exact same outfit he was wearing in a picture as to what I'd seen him just wearing. And I says to her, "Well, why was he saying 'I love you, Grace'? Like, who's Grace?" It was her brother's newborn baby girl, who had only been born a few weeks prior to this, and her name was Grace. I am fully convinced that I saw her dad paying her fucking niece a visit. I refused to ever go back in that bedroom ever again.
I want to tell you a ghost story. Try to excuse my oily red rooted hair. I've been taking it easy for the second bleach round, which I will do today, but I put a ton of oil on my hair a couple days ago to let it just kind of get some relief. Anyway, alright, I'm here to tell a ghost story. I don't really use social media that much, and I certainly don't use TikTok or really know how to use it, but there is this channel on TikTok called Audacitii, and it's basically Audacity with Stitch, which is like they stitch videos together of people using this hashtag and tagging Audacity, and they're just ghost stories. So I'm going to tell one. And the beginning of the thing is, tell me a ghost story that sounds basically like completely false, but it's completely true. Alright, so I've had a lot of paranormal experiences. I'm going to try to make this a short story, but I'm going to preface it. I've had a lot of paranormal experiences in my life, all different kinds, but they're all different. I've never really felt like haunted, but this is the story of having lived in a place in Los Angeles, an apartment off just a couple blocks from actually the North Hollywood station. So this was in 2010, I want to say, and I had just left New York. I had flown to LA, and I was looking for a place to stay. I was looking for a place to live, basically while I get back on my feet and get this new job I'd just started, and then so I could start going to my auditions. I would go to LA like once a year or once every year and a half-ish, and go there for several months. I'd go up there up to like 6-7 months and do acting and modeling work. So I used to be a model and an actor by Coastal with New York. Anyway, so this was one of those times, and I had met this really nice gentleman on Craigslist, and back then I had used Craigslist avidly. I mean, Craigslist helped me find all my places to live. So I didn't feel, it's not like 2024, and I don't know what's going on there these days, but Craigslist was my go-to to find a place to live, especially with couch surfing and with acting and only being there for weeks or sometimes a couple months at a time. So I had found this man, and I can't actually remember his name, but I can remember his face very well. He was a student at LA Film School. He was an older student. I think he was like in his mid-30s and I was in my mid-20s. Or like early 20s. I was like 22-ish. Something like that. Anyway, so he's like, I have this great apartment. It's really beautiful. I got it for a steal. I'm looking for a roommate to move in. I'm not a creepy guy. He made sure to put it out there that he wasn't a creep at all. And we hung out a bit before I chose to give it a try moving in. And he made sure to say, you know, the rent's only $700. I got a steal. Like, it should have been, he said it should have been nearly double that price. It was a beautiful apartment. It was just a simple little 2-bedroom, 2-bath, one of those made in the 70s. It seemed those classic LA buildings with the tiny little sliver of balconies. There was one balcony off of my room, which had its own bathroom, and there was one balcony off the living room. And these were, again, these little sliver balconies. It seems to be an LA thing. Like, you can really just barely fit like, it has a railing, and then you can just stand there. You can't really go anywhere on these balconies. Anyway, so I started to feel, honestly, like, right away, within a couple days, and this has never happened to me in my life in a place I have lived. It's hard to explain, but I lived in this place, and it just felt, I can't say it felt off. It didn't feel off. It's hard to explain. And honestly, I blocked out this story for many years in my memory because it scared me so much. And I just remembered it again, like, less than a year ago. So, it was a very quick situation, but it's hard to explain, but I essentially felt there was someone there. And I could feel a woman. It didn't feel masculine at all. It felt, like, very feminine, like, but I could tell there was something around me, like, in the daytime, when I'm doing my makeup in the fully mirrored closet. I hadn't moved into the bedroom because I couldn't afford to pay the rent for the bedroom yet, and the deal was that I would sleep on the couch until I could pay the rent for the bedroom, but I kept my stuff in there, and I do my makeup in there, and if I had a little audition, I'd do a quick, you know, photo video thing in the mirror's closet or whatever, but I always thought there was somebody with me, and I didn't feel, during the day, it didn't feel oppressive or anything like that, but I could tell there's something there. And when you can tell unconsciously that something's there long before your conscious hits it, you just want to make more noise. So every time I was in that apartment, I just felt there was noise. I felt there was something. Excuse my black nails. I've been doing resin art. That's from my resin boring yesterday. I'm not a witch, I swear. But yeah, I could just, it was almost like there was just somebody trying to talk to me all the time. Like, honestly, right behind me. Like, it just felt like I was never alone. It didn't feel like in a lot of things, but it felt like one or two, something was there. And I would always have the TV on, even during the day. And that's just not something. I don't care about the TV. I'm not a diligent TV watcher, and definitely back then. It was just kind of something I passed out to at night. But I'd have it on all day. Anytime I was home alone, I'd have it on. He wouldn't come home till like sometimes 8:30. He'd go out with a girl, or, you know, he'd be doing school really late, filming a class project. And basically one night I swore, I had the TV on. He was in his bedroom. You know, he sleeps with the door shut, but his door to his room was maybe like just 25, 30 feet maybe from the couch. And I swore, even with the TV on, that there was a woman trying to talk to me. I could only explain it as she was just trying to say my name. She might have been trying to speak sentences, but all I could recognize is something that made me feel like I was crazy. Like, somebody was just kept trying to say, Christine, Christine. Like, only at night, though. Like, it was secret, and like at night, you know, this person could only talk, or, you know, that I could only perceivably hear their voice at night. And I refused to believe it. I mean, I thought I was going crazy. I thought maybe I could have even been haunted. I probably would have believed that more than the place that I lived in had an actual presence. So until it was undeniable, I was going to stay there. And I only lived there a week and a half. So you could probably see where this is going. But like, next day, it was the next day or the night after, You know, I'm in the living room, I'm looking at a script or whatever the hell I was doing, the TV's blaring, I have the news. I would just play the news, because it would change, you know, and people were largely with their tones, like, happy, despite the time of day, and it was a lively thing I could have on and I could fall asleep to. The balcony was just barely, like, within 5 feet from where the TV was to the right, and there's, again, another balcony through my room, which is basically behind the TV is a room, that wall, and, yeah, so one night, all I remember, I'm just laying there on the couch trying to sleep. I had already had these feelings of just, like, it's really a feeling that maybe not necessarily somebody's yelling at you, but that somebody's really on your coattails, like, in your ear trying to get your attention, saying things. That's kind of what it was. But I can't remember much of anything of what she would actually say, except for things that I would hear, like, just my name. It was almost like that was the beginning, and then maybe she thought maybe I could understand her better in the future. I'm not really sure. So one night I was really freaked out. I'm laying here on the couch. I have the blanket. Literally that night I was like, okay, well, I can't keep denying it. Like, it seems, even though it's dark in the room and there's nobody here and it's just the news, it's just really hard to deny. I can't keep being scared of something that I'm not even believing myself that it's existing. And so I had my head covered completely with the blanket. Like, I would literally tuck my blanket over my head, past my nose, and under my feet, and I would make a little cocoon, and I would face the back of the couch. And I would just keep it pulled over, and just whenever I could fall asleep. I wouldn't want any air, because I felt like any pocket was like a pocket for her to stick her little head in, or whoever this was, and be like, Christine, it freaked me out. Well, that night, it became apparent I was not sleeping well, and undeniably, I mean, I think it was just like 2 o'clock in the morning or something by this point. My brain was overactive. I just wasn't sleeping. It wasn't like anything particularly scary was happening. I just felt like somebody was there, and then I'm just laying there, and then all of a sudden, as clear as day, almost like somebody would have put their freaking lips up to the blanket where my ear was, and she said very clearly, Christine! Like this, like she'd been trying to talk to me, and I'm not hearing her, and it was important. And I will tell you, that was undeniable. It was crystal clear. Like, my roommate, if he was in the room, would have heard it. And my reaction was to fly off the couch, swerve that blanket when I bolted into my roommate's room. I opened the door and I dove into his bed and I put the covers over, all within a matter of 2 seconds. I ran to his room, dove in his bed, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I've never done this before in my life. I've never even just gone in my roommate's room like this, but I can hear a woman. She's been trying to talk to me for days, and I didn't want to scare you, and I didn't want to feel crazy, or you know, and I wanted to make sure it was a real thing, but like, there is a woman haunting this apartment. And he laughed, and he didn't deny anything, and he flipped on the lights, and he sat up, and he said, I need to tell you something that I should have told you before you moved in. This place is cheap because a woman was murdered here. Apparently a newlywed couple, he said, was murdered there. They had just moved in. They had just been married. They were 20-somethings, very happy. This was their first apartment. And apparently someone broke in and killed her. And I don't know if they, did anything else in the situation. I just know that her husband eventually came home and found her body in the closet or something. Or I get it mixed up because somebody was found in the closet and then somebody was thrown off the balcony. But yeah, I think it was actually that the woman was thrown off the balcony. And the man was ambushed when he came home. They didn't expect him to come home, and he was killed. I think he was apparently put into the closet. And it was very bloody. It was a bloody situation, a robbery gone wrong kind of thing, maybe. I'm not really sure. I've looked it up many, many times, and I maybe just don't know how to look up to see if my old apartment's haunted or not. But, yeah, I moved out the next day. Like, I had nowhere to go. It did not matter. I was okay flying back to New York if that was the case. But there was definitely a woman haunting that apartment, and I've never experienced anything like that in my life. And I've had several many paranormal experiences since then. Again, that was in 2010, or it would have been like early 2010, like February, March, April-ish. You know, I've seen orbs since then. A couple years later, when I lived in New York City, and I was there for a bit longer. At this time, I was in Fort Lee Historic National Park at like 10 p.m. and I saw some orbs with my ex-boyfriend, and it freaked him out so much he never wanted to speak about it again. That was my first like shared paranormal experience. I have not had another shared paranormal experience since then, but I've had a massive other paranormal experiences, including seeing my grandpa protecting me at a rest area in 2020. So, you know, I've had a good, well-rounded group of experiences, and since, you know, I started meditating in 2020, I've also had experiences during meditation. In 2022, when I lived in Oakland, I heard a man speaking full sentences during my meditation. And when I say speaking full sentences, I mean speaking full sentences. Like a very happy, jovial man, seemingly like maybe a spiritual figure, or it could have been my grandfather who passed away, because it sounded like his voice. But I don't make any assumptions, and I don't need to like solve the case. I have had a lot of experiences I can't explain, and that is one of them. But he was speaking full sentences to me. And I think, you know, you can learn to let go, and you're conscious, you'll have experiences like that. But in this apartment haunting, she was not speaking full sentences. This was not a meditative somebody coming through psychically when I'm relaxed and I'm, you know, susceptible to that. This was a very different experience. So yeah, that's my scary story. I'm sorry it was like 13 minutes long. I have been dreading recording this because I don't know how to tell it. There's not much going on, but it was the scariest thing that's probably happened to me. So yeah. Hey there, I want to tell you a quick ghost story. I am trying again to make it very short, because apparently it has to be under 10 minutes to be able to stitch with Audacity, but Audacity has this, please ignore my black witch hands. I've been pouring black resin for an astronomy resin lamp I'm making. Anyway, I'm going to attempt to tell another ghost story in less than 10 minutes, so it can be hopefully stitched with Audacity, with their whole ghost story situation on TikTok. Anyway, okay. Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely false but is entirely true. That's essentially the prompt. Okay, so in 2012, I was with an ex-boyfriend. I was in my early 20s. I was 22 years old. I lived in New York City, and he lived across the bridge in Jersey, which was already a forbidden romance back then in 2009. You didn't dare admit that you go to Jersey, let alone that you're dating a man in Jersey. But that is a story for another time. He lived across the bridge. I had to go across the bridge. He rode his bike. He gave me a bike to use, so before we knew it, we were biking all over New York, and especially all over the shoreline of Weehawken all the way through Fort Lee on our bikes. And we would go to Fort Lee Historic National Park a lot. It was just a really beautiful place. I'm sure it still is beautiful. But the wonderful thing about Fort Lee Historic National Park is that it's just literally the park, which is a brand new at the time, beautifully lit, LED lit park on the water, was literally under George Washington Bridge. So if you would go there at night before the park would shut down, you would have this beautiful, like literally little lawn onto yourself. It was almost like your own little feeling of an island, and you could see New York right across the water, and you were literally right under the George Washington Bridge. It was spectacular. But we had no idea, because we had gone there so many times during the day, and we hadn't gone there this late, and at this time it was past 10 o'clock. It was like 10:03 or something when we arrived. We did not actually know they shut the park down. So we had to move that big metal car thing that they put up at night and go through the little path, and our bikes we had to walk through because it was closed. They clearly didn't want anybody in there, and we're already at this point trespassing on a national park. And yes, we were a little mischievous, but we didn't like to trespass, especially in a national park. But we had just biked 14 miles, and a lot of it was uphill. And the last couple miles is on this part of the highway where there's actually, it's a very dangerous place to ride your bikes. There's no sidewalk. So we had taken this big trek, and it had taken us a couple hours, and it was much darker than we had thought. In fact, it was pitch dark by the time we arrived. So we entered that park only to find out that actually the entire park is not lit up. None of the roads are lit up at night at all. The only part that is actually lit up is the park itself. after you get through this, long winding and then a fork in the road, you take a left or a right, and you take the right, and it goes through this quick tunnel that's about 150 feet long, but pitch black. But then you're just right there on that waterfront park. They had a beautiful little rec building and actually a little, what is it called? Like a junk food machine. And so we knew that we could get snacks there. They had a water fountain. We could have our little romantic picnic that he wanted to take me on, and this was the goal. Well, we went through the park. We're on our bikes. There's no light, but this is a road, a paved road. The road isn't that big at all, and it was completely tree-lined, and both sides of forested. On the left side, it was like more of a mountain area. You couldn't really go up there. And then on the right side, it was towards the water's edge. After, I'd never walked through that part of the forested area, but there was a little bit of a forest, and then you would be essentially on the other side was the park. So we're riding our bikes. We're going quite fast because we didn't realize how dark it would be. We come to the fork in the road that we're used to that just has that tunnel if you take a right, and then after the tunnel, we were home free. We come to the fork in the road, and at this time, I barely knew any of the history of Fort Lee Historic National Park. Currently, I know a lot of the history of Fort Lee Historic National Park, and you will come to understand why. So we're at this fork in the road. We look up and we see an animal. We see two red eyes. I grew up in Montana and Wyoming. I'm not scared of animals. I'm not scared of being in forest at night. Camping was one of my favorite pastimes growing up. And in fact, during this time, camping was not cool, but it was starting to become cool again as the American pastime. So all these little pop-up shops were arriving in New York with bougie little camping supplies. And my boyfriend, who was the bougiest person you ever met and hated camping and hated hiking and was the kind of person that would rather pace the beach for hours talking on the phone about how annoyed he is at having to be at a lake than honestly enjoying the nature. So that's the kind of person he was. So when he saw these two animal eyes, he freaked the fuck out. He doesn't know how to deal with animals. He had no idea what that was, but it must have been a very tall animal because these two red eyes were, I'd say about 6 feet from the ground. And so these red eyes are ahead of us. I'm like, okay, well, it's an animal. Let's just give it a chance. We'll just keep, we won't approach it. We'll give it a second to, realize that we're humans. We'll say hello. But during this trying to, these couple minutes of deciding what we should do next, like if we should try to go around this animal or we should just go, suddenly, the eyes of this animal, one of them bolted, the one on the right side bolted up. Blink! That's odd, because now the eyes are not together like eyes. And then the left one bolted up too, right after the right one. And then the right one went chink, and it bolted out, way away. I don't know where it went. It flew away. And then the left one did the same thing. Flew away. Those were not eyes. They were red orbs. We were terrified. I was fully terrified by this point. I knew that would have been a lot less scary if it was some sort of animal. I knew there wouldn't be a bear there. There wouldn't be a bear in Fort Lee National Park on the water. But that was not an animal. And I wanted to go back, I'll be honest, but he was so scared. And he was a very stubborn person. And I didn't feel like going back. And clearly, he was okay with not either. So we just got on our fucking bikes. Sorry for the curse word, and we bolted through the area where we had to go through the dark ass tunnel. And within a minute, we were on the other side of the tunnel, and we were in this lighted area in Fort Lee National Park, looking back like scared to honestly go back. I don't remember much of the drive on our bikes back. What I do remember is that we wanted to go fast, but we wanted to stay together. My boyfriend after that never wanted to talk about it ever again. It had completely broken what he believed to be real. His mom was a bit woo-woo, but only for, for looks and appearances. I mean, she clearly wasn't a spiritual person. And I was, but I had never had any experience like that. I'd not had any experience other than a couple years before, an experience that I apparently blocked from my memory that had nothing to do with orbs. Had to do with a woman speaking my name in an apartment in LA that I lived very briefly. But I had actually forgot about that experience at this time because I don't remember at all talking about this experience, but I also know that he didn't want to talk about it at all. And he did not. He would, apparently, I'd find out later, talk about it a lot with his mom and his sister would look into it. And they would say that they found a bunch of things online where a lot of people had seen orbs at that park. I did my own research, and I found a forum for Fort Lee Historic National Park that is still around. It's an old forum, but it's basically like a lot of people talking about orb sightings. They primarily see red and white orbs, but also blue orbs occasionally, literally right there. And apparently at that fork in the road, that little wedge of property that was about 100 feet wide between the right turn and the left fork was a cemetery for those who had passed during a battle during the Revolutionary War there at Fort Lee Historic National Park. Apparently there was a cemetery right there in the trees, and a lot of the tombstones and stuff, I never went back. But the tombstones, I never went back at night. I think one time I went during the day, and it was very early in the day, and that was it. But the tombstones were covered up a lot by brush and by plants, and there was even like an old structure foundation in there somewhere. I saw a lot of pictures on this forum, and people had actually been able to capture red orbs in photos, and it looked exactly the same. So I didn't know that much about orbs. I just knew it was a spiritual thing that I didn't understand. I thought people who saw those kinds of things were maybe in touch with something special. But I learned about orbs in 2012 during that time period. So thank you for listening. Yeah, an old battlefield. It was pretty cool. Fort Lee Historic National Park. Check it out if you ever get a chance. You can look up those forums and see all the sightings of the orbs online. Thanks for listening.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but isn't.
I don't know if this is a ghost story, but it's really just unexplained, so if you can explain it, please do. Or if this has happened to you, let me know. I live in North Carolina, if that matters, and this happened in 2015, so a year after my daughter was born. It was Halloween night at 3 a.m., so yeah. I guess technically it was the next day and no longer Halloween, but it did happen at 3 a.m. So at the time, we lived in a garage apartment, and it had 3 rooms, I guess, like the bathroom and 2 bedrooms on either side, and then like a big open space for a kitchen, living room, kitchen table that was really small. This garage apartment was not ground level, so you would have to go through a laundry room that was connected to a garage, and through another door, and then up a flight of stairs to get to the inside of our garage apartment. With that being said, it was just my 2 dogs, my baby, my partner, and myself. Our baby is sleeping peacefully in between her dad and myself, and then 2 dogs in the bed with us. We kept every door in the garage apartment shut, which wasn't like many doors. It was just the bathroom door, and then across the hall from our room was our baby's room that she didn't use, but it had her stuff in it. And we would keep that door shut just because we never really used that room, other than for her to play in it, and I didn't want the dogs in there getting her stuff dirty or whatever, I don't know. And my boyfriend, her dad, also kept all blinds shut. I'm a naked window neighbor, my boyfriend is not. So back to the story, it's 3 a.m. and the only light in the garage apartment is from the glow of our TV. We really can't see many lights outside, the blinds are shut. We can't see cars drive by because we're not level to the ground. So we're not seeing headlights and stuff like that. We're not very close to the road. There's a whole driveway that is between the garage apartment and the little road through the neighborhood. But yeah, the only light in the garage apartment at this time is just the glow of our TV. And my boyfriend and I cannot sleep. No idea why, but we went trick-or-treating, whatever, got home, and just could not go to sleep. All of a sudden, we see a light form outside of our bedroom door, which was open, the only open door, I guess, in the apartment. And the ball of light was about maybe this big, I don't know. As soon as we see it, though, it is gone, but not gone because it shoots into our bedroom like a big streak of light and just kind of explodes, I guess. I have no idea how to explain what happened, what this was. But it lights up the entire bedroom as if a light switch was turned on, which it was not turned on because this lasted maybe 20 to 30 seconds. And then it was dark again and only the TV was lighting up the room. I immediately thought aliens
or just the most terrifying things you can think of that would happen at 3 a.m. My boyfriend is also very scared. He looks around the whole house to make sure no one's like in the apartment, which I don't know why someone would like throw a lightning ball at us in our room, but I mean, that's the only rational thing we could think to do because we had a baby in the bed with us and we were just like, must protect our baby at all costs. No one was in the apartment. No one was out back in the backyard behind the apartment. We had like a whole fenced in backyard that we shared with my parents who lived in the house next door. It was not lightning outside. Like, I just really can't think of anything else it would be unless, like, some electrical thing can happen in households that, like, throw balls of light into bedrooms. I don't know. I did not sleep that night at all. I had trouble sleeping that whole week because I thought whatever was there would come back and it would happen again, and it was just so scary. Not that anything else creepy happened beyond that, but just because I couldn't explain what just happened, it really terrified me. The light is not the same color as the lights in our house. We had like those yellowish orange lights that were like old looking, and this light was like a white blue LED light. It was like cool colors and just did not match the color of our house. But it was so bright that it was able to light up the entire bedroom as if a light was turned on. And as soon as we saw it, acknowledged it, freaked out, it was gone. So we only had like a minute to really process what had happened, and then it was over, and we were just like, what the fuck was that? Like, what could that have been? After that night, my partner and I never really talked about it because it creeped him out, creeped me out. We couldn't explain it. We talked about it. Could it have been lightning from outside? I don't know. It wasn't storming. And I even looked back to that night on Halloween in 2015, and there were no thunderstorms. It wasn't raining, so I don't know. I assume there were no thunderstorms, but it wasn't storming that night that we noticed. My grandma did live in the garage apartment before us, and I was really sad, vulnerable, and grieving because she had died just a couple weeks before this experience. And at the time, to like comfort myself and to be less creeped out, I like to imagine that maybe that was my grandma, like saying goodbye, or I don't know, just showing up. But yeah, this is 100% true. Maybe it doesn't sound true. I love spooky stuff, so I love watching these videos, and this was fun to tell the story. We had other spooky, unexplained things happen in this household and other houses that we lived in. But yeah, we just can't explain it. I don't know if it's ghosts. I don't know if it's aliens. I don't know if it's just something that happens in houses. But if you've experienced something like this, please tell me because I really want to know what happened.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
I had to wait till it got a little bright outside to tell the story because it bringing it up just gives me the chills. So I'm not new to nothing like this happening. I've had a lot of these experiences throughout my life that it really takes one that has went through what I've seen and actually witnessed this shit to actually believe what the fuck I'm talking about. So, long story short, I'm in a new apartment, me, my mom, my grandma. Grandma passes away. Some time goes by, I switch rooms. I move into the room that she was in, the room I'm in right now. And, I don't think none of it, I had a good relationship with my grandma. This is my grandma's room, so, I know that, you know what I'm saying? So, fast forward, I'm trying to, like, plan with how I want the room, which side I want my bed on, which side I want my TV on type shit. So, I put my bed, not on the side I'm on right now, but on the other side of my room. And it's along the wall. And I noticed when I had my bed on that side of the room, I had a lot of things happen to me while I was sleeping. I'm not new to sleep paralysis. I get it all the time. And recently I've been all right, but when I would get it, it would be bad. It would be scary. And yeah, so I just try to just not sleep like that. I try to avoid it. And I've gotten it laying like flat on my face too. So yeah. This night, Baby daddy's going to work. He does come in around 2, 3 sometimes, but he'll make a stop. He has a life. He has friends. If it's a Saturday or something and something going on, he gonna go out. So he's not always expected, to be back at a certain time type shit. That's important pertaining to this story. So I'm playing my Switch, playing Animal Crossing, fall asleep. Fall asleep laying on my stomach. And as I'm sleeping, it hits me. I'm stuck. Only thing I could do is open my eyes, look around. That's all I could do. I'm trying to move, but you're moving slow. I'm in full-fledged fucking sleep paralysis. Great. So, I'm getting scared. Just chill talking about this shit. I feel my body just like tingling and just not right, And I start to feel some shit touching me. And I start to feel hands just going up and up and up and up and up and up my legs and like literally massaging my fucking legs. Okay, if I wasn't scared, it probably would have felt good. I have to laugh so I don't be scared. So at this moment, I'm frozen and I'm laying flat like this. Let me sit up a little bit. I'm laying flat like this, right? My fucking legs go from this to this. And I'm laying down, but my legs is in the fucking air. Now, I'm freaking the fuck out because I'm by myself. I'm in this room. My baby is in the next room sleep. My mama is in the back. She sleep. Nobody is here. Baby daddy's supposed to be home walking through the door any minute now, but he ain't here. And I made sure he wasn't at home before I laid down because a lot of weird shit kept happening. And I used to always be like, you fuck with me in my sleep. So I was really making sure like he was not home before I laid down. So when this happened, I thought I was gonna have a fucking heart attack because my heart was beating so fucking fast. And I was stuck for about a good minute and a half. And then I hear my bedroom door open and my legs drop and it's my baby daddy walking the door. And I pop up, I'm sweating, panting, looking at him. He looking at me like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I'm like, did you just have my legs in the air? Was you just in here? He like, I just walked in here. I'm like, man, JoJo, something went right, man. I ain't smoking nothing before I laid down. And he just looking at me like I'm fucking crazy. And I know he know I'm not crazy because he lived with me at the other house and he had some crazy shit happen there, paranormal shit. But just having something touch you, can't nobody tell me that wasn't real.
Tonight I'm going to tell you a spooky story, except these are unique because they come from you guys, the viewers. I've been given permission to share all of these stories, and I have promised to keep every one of the submitters anonymous. The only thing I ask from you guys as my audience is to be conscientious and considerate in my comment section because these are people's lived experiences. So our first story of the night is entitled Gut Feeling. Now, our story follows a woman named Alaska, and when Alaska was in college, she was out with her roommate named Virginia, and Virginia was there on a student visa. Now, the two girls were both drinking, dancing, having a great time that evening, when all of a sudden, two men approached them. Now, according to Alaska, these two men were gorgeous and very attractive, and to put the cherry on top of all of it, they seemed to be really into the two women, and as a result, they stayed close to them the entire evening. So as the four of them were spending time together, the men would ask them questions. For Virginia, they were curious about her accent and where she was from. And then for Alaska, they asked her about her home life, if she was able to talk to her parents often, just general questions, things that would help you get to know someone a bit better. But as the night was closing, the men decided they wanted to take mementos from their evening and asked the two girls if they could take pictures together. Now, the girls agreed, and so the men and them posed for their photos, and after that, the men left. Now, I should add that during this time, Alaska and Virginia were a little tipsy, but one of the things that Alaska noticed immediately was the haste in which the two men left after taking their pictures. Now, Alaska mentions that while she didn't see this as odd behavior, she did take notice and tucked it away at the back of her mind. But the girls continued on with their night. But right around last call, something weird started happening to Alaska. She just kept envisioning these two guys waiting outside for them, and it was just something in her gut that started to tell her that something was a little bit weird. Now, she tried to persist on with the evening, but again, these images of these two men that they had met earlier were always with her, and she never could get them out of her mind. And she mentioned seeing them just standing there outside waiting for them. Now remember, it had been a while since the two men had left the girl, so the fact that she was having these thoughts was a little uncomfortable for her. And as the thoughts started to become more pervasive, she just got this overwhelming feeling that the two of them needed to leave. So Alaska told Virginia how she felt, and the two girls agreed to leave. Once they got outside, Alaska did a quick peek around to see if she could see the two gentlemen, and once she realized she was in the clear, she booked it across the street to a storefront that was still open. From the storefront, you could still see the bar. So as they were waiting for their Uber, Alaska kept her eye trained on the entrance to the bar. And that's when she saw it. The two guys. They had walked right up to the entrance and they were standing outside. And it appeared as though they were looking for somebody, or maybe some bodies. Now, Alaska mentions that as they continued to stand there, they started to play with their phones and they would look up periodically and look back down at their phones as though they were looking for someone. And Alaska mentions that as last call let out and all of these people started to flood outside of the club, that these men started to become even more frantic in their behaviors. They started searching around and looking at each other and looking back down at their phone, but eventually the two guys left. And luckily for Alaska and Virginia, the two of them were out of harm's way. But Alaska always maintains that she knew something bad was going to happen had they gone off with those two guys, or had those two guys managed to find them. Looking back on this story, Alaska mentions feeling like these guys definitely had terrible intentions for both her and Virginia. This is because she felt those guys targeted them, especially her roommate, because she was there on a student visa. And she describes her roommate as this gorgeous, dark-skinned Kenyan woman. She just knows deep down inside that whatever they had planned for Alaska, it would have been even worse for Virginia. And so that's something that always unsettles her. But I want to know what you guys are thinking about this story in the comments. Have you ever had a situation like this where a gut feeling saved your life, or at least prevented you from experiencing some grave danger? Drop it in the comments, let me know your thoughts, and let's get on to story number 2. Now, the next spooky story on our list is entitled Into the Storm, and it reads as follows. Hello, my name is Carolina, and I have a premonition story for you. I'm from North Carolina, and back in 2005, during the summer, we were experiencing the worst thunderstorms, which I was very afraid of. These storms weren't letting up for days on end. It was scary always seeing the sky black/gray and receiving constant tornado and flash flood warnings. One night, the biggest storm hit during the night, but surprisingly, I fell asleep as it was going on. In my dream, I saw our neighborhood was flooded. People were stranded on their rooftops, and helicopters were flying above us. My dad was swimming over to save me, and that's when I woke up in a panic. I kid you not, 2 weeks later, my family and I are watching CNN, and the same thing I described to you is what I saw on TV. I'm still spooked about it. Now, to me, this is one of the spookier stories on the list, especially considering what's going on in California right now. There were a lot of people who were predicting this would happen. Now, of course, that could just be pattern recognition, but I think this is something that happens to a number of people, especially if they live in areas where there is a lot of really terrible weather phenomenon happening. So to me, this is something that scares me because I see it being a very real thing that happens. I know there are stories out there of people who experienced Hurricane Katrina or massive tsunamis having similar events happen to them, where they go to sleep and they dream about it almost as if it's happening, and then shortly after it happens. Anyways, let me know if you've had any of these experiences in the comments where you've experienced something about the weather and then later on it comes true. It can be floods, snowstorms, tornadoes, etc. I really like this kind of thing because I think it happens a lot. Now, the third story on the list is entitled The Locker Room, and it reads as follows. Hello, my name is Georgia. When I was in school, we had a gym period. Now keep in mind, there was a story about the place being spooky and stuff, but to me, it was just like any other scary story of a ghost that each school has. So all of the girls had to line up for PE for the stuff we do, and the boys were playing around because they had already gotten their marks. And if you're done, you can go and play or do your own thing. So when I was done, I walked past the girls' bathroom because my friend was done, and then I heard some girls in the bathroom scream, so I stopped and I looked in, and the girls were in there and they had just ran out. Now, the girls know that I'm not really scared of weird stuff like that, so they asked me to go into the bathroom. I was confused initially and asked why, and they said they heard knocking and other sounds in a closed bathroom stall, and nobody was in there other than them. So I went in thinking nothing, and I opened each one of the bathroom doors and saw nothing. I then turned around and told the girls to stop fooling around and that the gym teacher is going to be angry at us if we keep screaming. But just as I finished saying that, I heard a bang. And once I did, I turned around, my back facing the girls, and walked to the showers. But in order to get there, you have to go around the corner because that's where the showers were. But once I did, I saw nothing. Now the strange thing is, when I walked back, all of the bathroom doors were closed. Now remember, she had opened them up to look inside of them, and nobody had been in there after she did so. Somehow, between her telling those girls to stop and her going to check the showers, somebody closed every single one of those bathroom stalls. That's spooky. Once Georgia started walking back and saw all those doors were closed, she admits that she got mad and told the girls to stop closing the doors because it was freaking her out. Rightfully so. That would make me uncomfortable too. But all of the girls stayed silent and they just kind of kept their eyes trained on her. They were just looking at her. Now, as she thinks about it, she realized that in order for the girls to have gotten from the door to the bathroom stalls, it would have taken about 5 feet, or they would have had to walk about 5 feet. The problem with that is she would have heard them if they crept up on her because she would have been around that middle stall area. So she would have been able to hear it the whole time. And yet the doors were closed, but she didn't hear anybody walking up on her. And the girls insisted that they stayed next to the door because they weren't going in there. Now again, as George is standing there having this confrontation with the girls who she thinks are pranking her, she starts hearing this loud knocking and banging and other sounds coming from behind her. Now at this point, she's back towards the entrance of the bathroom, and there's still a number of girls in there with her. She tells them to stop being funny. She doesn't like it. It's not a game. And she knows that there's one of them in there playing around with her. And so she doesn't appreciate that, which I understand. But when she looked at them, like really looked at the entire group, she saw that nobody out of that group was missing. Everybody who had walked in with her was still standing right there as she was talking to them. Now, the strange thing is that once Georgia realized that everybody was in the bathroom with her and she could see all of them and nobody had gotten behind her, she got mad and decided she was going to go and see where the banging came from. But as she went over there, she saw nothing, but the door was banging, right? They had all experienced it. And so Georgia looked under the stall, and there was no way you could get over the stalls because the walls reached from floor to ceiling. So Georgia, after seeing that nobody was in the stall either, yet it was closing by itself, all of them had closed by themselves, got a really bad gut feeling, and she ran out. And as she did, the stall slammed shut. And it was so loud, it got the attention of the PE teacher, who came over to investigate what was happening with the girls. Now, of course, the teacher confronted the girls and obviously didn't believe a thing they said. But Georgia states that a year later, she talked to a friend who did believe what was happening. And the friend thinks that whatever it was that was in that bathroom wanted them out. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about this story. To me, it sounds a little bit like Fear Street. It has all those spooky vibes. So school hauntings are one of the more fascinating hauntings, in my opinion, because you always wonder about the people who are haunting the school. Oftentimes, they can be younger. Sometimes they're faculty. But I often think about the lives that these people lived prior to them passing away. Now, I did watch the TV show School Spirits, so this story has a bit of those vibes. It also reminds me of the Fear Street vibes, like I said, which I absolutely love. But I want to know what you guys are thinking about this. And if you guys have any tales about a haunted school or something, drop it in the comments, because I love hearing those tales. And of course, let me know what you guys think about our first reader series. I would love to get more of your stories so I can share them. I will probably switch the format of these videos just to make it more consistent with the other ones, but I'm sick this week, so this is what we got, and I will see you guys in my next video.
Let's do a little scary story time, shall we? About a month or so ago, I posted a video that was titled, "By Talking About the Paranormal, Are You Inviting Things In?" I'd gotten numerous questions about it, and basically in the video I go into detail about how I believe that no, you're not inviting things in as long as you have set boundaries and like you know what you're doing, right? Well, in the video I did go into detail about how I have been experiencing a few things, so I figured I'd give you guys an update about them. So, in short, I had been experiencing like knocks around my house. These knocks are still continuing. It's different from the sound of a house settling. It literally sounds like somebody is going up to the wall and knocking like hard. Kind of like you would do to get someone's attention, I guess. These knocks are singular knocks, and usually it'll happen, I'll hear it but not acknowledge it, and then it happens again. If I'm in my living room, it will happen on the wall, on the ceiling, randomly. This isn't like a constant thing, it'll just randomly pop up, and in the hallway right outside the living room. I've also heard it in my bedroom. It'll like hit the edge of my desk, just randomly. Then I also talked about how I have been touched while trying to go to sleep. And it just so happens that this happened to me again last night. I was laying in my bed. It was probably 2:30 a.m., just like last time. I'm laying there, my dog is at the end of my bed, I'm sleeping next to my husband, and it literally feels like, at first it feels like somebody has like put their hand on the mattress, so like I can feel it sink down, not necessarily somebody sitting full weight, but just like, you know, pressing. And then it happens, and I feel somebody grab my leg and squeeze. I ignored it, whatever. It happens again, literally not even a minute later, where I feel the same pressure of somebody squeezing my leg. I usually don't react to these types of things. I like to think that it is my grandfather checking in on me, because I have, you know, when I was little, he used to tuck me in before I went to sleep and literally like shove the comforter up under my legs and stuff like that. And before he would go, he would always like squeeze my leg like, "Good night." And so I think that's him. Now, I will say, I've also experienced orbs flying in and out a lot in my videos. And I'm not a big person, like a supporter of orbs, if you will. I think that most of the time they can be explained, whether it's, you know, lens issues or bugs. Because a lot of the time, bugs will fly in front of a light and they almost look transparent. But usually you can kind of tell the difference. These are full-on orbs, and I don't know where they come from. But they will swipe in and swipe out every time, just like this. Same pattern. It's happened in most of my videos, but usually it's a part that I end up cutting out and shortening the clip anyway, so I don't really pay that much attention to it. It did happen yesterday, and also while filming yesterday, I was using my light, and the light started to blink like a strobe light. Very strange, right? Check the battery, full battery on the light, so there's no reason why it should be strobing. But that happened first, and so I was like, okay, maybe my light's just like glitching out, because technology, right? Then the orb flew in the camera right after I said that, and I was like, maybe someone's messing with me. Again, my house is kind of old, and the land that my house sits on was a known area where, you know, the Civil War took place. So, I mean, there have been times we've been outside and we've seen like shadows in the field and like things like that. But nothing ever super scary. Let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced any of these things before and how you dealt with it. But until next time, stay close to the light.